In September 2008, an auditor named Karen Simmons was reviewing routine transfers at a regional bank in Michigan when she noticed something that shouldn't be there. A single line in a 4,000-page report. A value of $340 transferred to an account that technically no longer existed. She marked it with a yellow post-it note, thinking it was a system error. 3 weeks later, when she returned to that line, she realized it was repeated 847 times, over 10 years, and the total wasn't $340. It was $87 million. The culprit? The most trusted employee the bank ever had. 22 years with the company. Employee of the month 14 times. Responsible for the very audit system that should have detected it. James Cole joined Midwest Federal Bank in 1996 at the age of 28, with an accounting degree and a phrase his colleagues still repeat today. He was the kind of person you wanted on your side in a crisis. Methodical, discreet, always the first to arrive, the last to leave. In 2001, he was promoted to Internal Systems Manager, the person responsible for ensuring that the bank's own control mechanisms function correctly. In 2004, he won the Corporate Integrity Award from the Regional Banking Association. He had a wife, 2 children, a mortgaged home, and a Labrador dog named Attic. He was so predictable, so reliable, so completely without surprises that nobody, absolutely nobody, thought twice when they saw his name on a document. And that's exactly what he exploited, for 10 years. But what led a man with this profile to start stealing? The answer isn't greed. It's more disturbing than that, and it will completely change how you see this case. In 1998, James' youngest son was diagnosed with a rare neurological disease. The experimental treatment, the only one showing results, was not covered by health insurance. It cost $180,000 a year. James was 30 years old, earned $58,000 a year, and had a mortgage. He did what any father would do. He depleted his savings, sold his car, and took out loans. By 2001, he was $340,000 in debt, and his son was improving. And it was at that exact point, when everything seemed to be working out, that he noticed something no external auditor had noticed. There was a flaw in the inactive account reconciliation system that he himself had helped build, a flaw that allowed transfers below a certain value to pass without double verification. And he was the only person in the bank with access, knowledge, and authorization to use this flaw without raising suspicion. The first transfer was for $340. He waited 3 weeks for some reaction. There was none. The second was also $340. Then the third. And then he stopped counting. The flaw that James exploited is technically called salami slicing. The principle is simple. Instead of stealing large sums from a few accounts, you steal microscopically small amounts from a huge number of accounts. Amounts so small that no customer notices, no alert system triggers, no routine audit detects. In James's case, the value per transfer never exceeded $340, exactly $1 below the threshold that activated double-checking in the system he himself had calibrated. But the system had 380,000 active accounts, and he ran the process once a week. Do the math. $340 multiplied by even 5% of the accounts per week, for 52 weeks, for 10 years. That's $87 million. Distributed in slices so thin that each individual customer lost an average of $230 over a decade. Less than $2 per month. The price of a coffee. But there was a problem that James hadn't foreseen in 1998. 10 years of transactions leave traces. Not in the amounts, those were invisible. In the metadata, in the times, in the pattern. And it was precisely this pattern that Karen Simmons found that night in September 2008. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. With $87 million accumulated over 10 years, James Cole didn't buy a yacht. He didn't own a house in Monaco. He didn't have a car collection. He lived in the same mortgaged house from 1996. He drove the same 2003 Honda Civic. He ate at the same cheap restaurant every Friday. When investigators scrutinized the accounts, they were baffled. Where was the money? The answer came in the form of 23 bank accounts spread across 7 countries. Not in James's name, in his son's name. A legal structure built over a decade that transformed $87 million into educational funds, medical treatments, legitimate real estate investments, and a trust fund that would ensure his son, now 22, healthy, and studying medicine, would never have to worry about money for the rest of his life. James didn't steal for himself. He stole to create a financial shield around his son that illness had threatened to destroy. The son didn't know. When the investigators went to him, he was in the medical school library studying neurology, the same disease he had had in childhood. When he found out where the money for the scholarship that paid for his studies came from, he fainted. Karen Simmons took 6 months to build the complete case. 847 transfers, 10 years of metadata, a pattern that was only visible when you looked from a great distance, like a satellite photo revealing invisible structures at street level. When the FBI knocked on James's door in March 2009, he opened it in his pajamas, took a sip of coffee, and simply said, "I know why you're here." He didn't try to flee. He didn't destroy evidence. He fully cooperated with the investigation, handed over documents from all 23 accounts, and spent 14 months assisting investigators in understanding exactly how the scheme worked. Information the FBI used to close 3 other systemic vulnerabilities in different banks. At trial, the prosecutor asked for 40 years. The defense argued mitigating circumstances. The judge remained silent for 4 minutes before speaking, and what he said went down in American court history. What did the judge say during those 4 minutes of silence? And what was the sentence that made the prosecutor himself request a review? That's in the next segment. But first, the bank. What happened to the bank? The judge handed down a sentence of 7 years, less than a fifth of what the prosecutor had asked for. And before announcing the number, he said something that has been transcribed in dozens of legal articles. This court is not judging a thief. It is judging a system that created conditions for a desperate father to find a loophole that shouldn't exist. The sentence reflects both crimes, that of James Cole and that of the system that failed to detect him for a decade. The bank paid $12 million in compensation to affected customers. Most received between $180 and $230. James served 5 years with good behavior, left in 2014, and today works as a bank security consultant, auditing bank systems to find the same flaws he exploited. His son graduated in medicine in 2016 and is now a pediatric neurologist. And the trust fund, after all the legal battles, was partially maintained. The courts understood that the son was an innocent beneficiary. The remaining money pays James's salary as a consultant. He closed the cycle. So the question remains, is James Cole a criminal or a father? Is the bank a victim or a flawed system that took 10 years to realize it was being robbed? And the most difficult question, if you were the judge, with all the information you have now, what would your sentence be? Leave it in the comments, because the next video has a story where this question doesn't have a right answer. And this time, the system that failed was much bigger than a bank.